Giddy up. Let's go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to your 2 o'clock session, the afternoon. We're going to do our best to keep you engaged. Welcome to Uncovering What Works, High-Impact Practices That Improve Performance. We call those PIPs in Illinois. Yeah, we just made that up because what does adult education need but another acronym? So you're welcome that we've made one more acronym for you. In the room, you have 4 members of our team from the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center. We call ourselves SIPDC. We are part of the Adult Education Professional Development Network in Illinois. We do support the entire state on a variety of different topics, and one of those is administrative processes, and data is another one of those, and so we kind of married those in coming up with the PIPs. My name is Sarah Goldammer. Welcome to everybody in the room. Welcome to everybody in our virtual room. Also, I am joined by Tara Schwab, and if you want to turn around, back there we have Amber Fornaciari and Anita Kerr. I'm going to let them, when they come up, introduce themselves a little bit, give you a little bit of information about them. Come on in and welcome. But let's go ahead and get started. Oh, one other housekeeping. We will have all of our slides with all of our resources available for you after this presentation. Amber did a fantastic job of making a whole packet, a plethora of resources for you. Our goal was to make sure that you have what you need if you want to replicate some of the things that we've done, that you can learn from what we've done. Before we jump in, though, I want to do a quick shout out to AALPD, which is the Association of Adult Literacy Professional Developers. So if we have any PDers in here, it is a free network of people from all across the country. We're about 300 PD professionals. Everybody who is presenting today is a member of AALPD. You can join by scanning the QR code. I also have cards for you later if you're interested. I can tell you about it, but I just want to give a little shout out. One of the things that we need in adult education, in addition to one more acronym, is we need to be able to share widely our resources because we're all expected to do so much with so little, so let's make sure that we share. So that's true of AALPD, and it's also true of your friends here from SIPDC because we are excited to share with you. So let's get started and tell you what's in this session. We're going to talk about the what, why, and how of PIPs, how it was born, why it was born, how it's moved through its toddler to adolescent stage, and how it's continuing to evolve. We're going to show you our process for the PIP model because our goal is that you're going to start with a much farther ahead starting line than what we did. You're going to see how PIPs actually helped us in Illinois. We're going to share our data with you of how it was a meaningful practice and it's something that we're continuing to improve. You're going to understand how you can use this process for professional development and for technical assistance. So as I said, we're hoping that you're going to walk away saying, okay, we're going to try this and here's some replicable practices for us. We're also going to ask you to reflect on ways the PIP process can be adapted and used for your work. So as you're going through this, feel free to ask questions. For you virtual folks, feel free to put something in the chat. We've got somebody monitoring the whole time, so that, and also if something doesn't make sense to you, please ask. All right. So practices that improve performances. First of all, what is it? What is this crazy thing? It's a process that our SIPDC group came up with, and we created it and collaborated with our funder, the Illinois Community College Board. Now they've always been on board. They thought, yeah, that's a great idea, but now they are a real partner in the process as well. As a part of that PIP process, we now identify the metrics that we have deemed through a process that we're going to take you through. What are the most important pieces that we want to make sure that our programs concentrate on to get the highest results that they possibly can? Part of the PIP process is after we determine that and look at the metrics of who is doing well, then we do a structured interview with programs asking them very detailed, pointed questions, which we're going to share with you, so that we can dig down and say, how are you getting these strong metrics? What are you doing? We believe, and we found out that that's true, there is a cause and effect. They're doing these things. And what was cool about it when we first started is there was no program that was doing well that couldn't answer the questions of what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. Sometimes there was a few that it was, oh gosh, okay, yeah, we are doing those things. And so it was also a little bit of celebration of the good work that they're doing. So that was a little extra that came from this process. So we're going to give you an Illinois overview. First of all, geography lesson. We're right next door to Indiana, so it was really easy for all of us to get here for this. Fun fact, Amber actually lives in Ohio, although she works for the great state of Illinois, so she had a little farther to come, but we're right next door. How many of you have been to Illinois before? Raise your hand if you've had the pleasure. All right. How many of you that raised your hand were in Chicago? Nothing wrong with Chicago. We love Chicago. But that picture up there of that really urban area, that's what most people think of when they think of Illinois. And we want to make sure, because it's important for the thinking about our PIPs, is that we're also those other two pictures. We have miles and miles and miles of farmland, especially if you drive through central Illinois. There are cornfields galore. We also have a lot of suburban and small town America. So when we were looking at metrics, we really needed to be mindful of looking at programs that were all of those. Are they urban? We have community-based organizations in Chicago as well as colleges. We have our school districts throughout the state. We have very, very rural programs, and we also have those suburban. So let's take a look at what our data looks like. In Illinois, we have over 800 adult education teachers, about 71 programs across the state that offer adult education. As I already kind of mentioned, a good over half of those are community colleges. Then we also have community-based organizations. All of those are in the greater Chicago area, and most of those are downtown Chicago. And then we also have school districts. In FY25, we served 63,000 learners. And here's the piece also that's really important in understanding why PIPs were so important for us. The local programs are given autonomy by our funder, the Illinois Community College Board, which is fantastic on some level, and it also can be a struggle because people are doing things very differently. And that leads us to our next slide of who told us to do this and where did we get the idea of PIP? Well, our funder did not tell us to do this. Really and truly, the idea came from our programs. Some of our really innovative thinking program directors said, hey, we want to know what the secret sauce is. We know that there's programs that are doing well. Help us to be able to collect and use what is good about them. This picture is actually real live Illinois adult education administrators in the wild. We brought them in for, we do a lot of learning communities and virtual options to bring people together. This actually was a picture we took last December when they said, we really need, there is so much going on. I don't think I have to tell this group like what they meant by that, but we want to get together in person. Can you set it up for us? And we're like, roger that. We'll do it. And so we had them together. And so we had already been working on PIPs, but the cool thing about this is we were able to use some of the information with this group, and we also got ideas for additional PIPs from them being together. So let's frame the idea of PIP. This was really our question. Do we know what's working, and how can we tell others? That sounds really simple, right? Yeah, except it wasn't. Our goal was to support our programs. It was to look at those valuable metrics that were used to measure high performance, identify the programs in Illinois that demonstrate the high performance, and then research the replicable practices. Again, that sounded pretty simple and pretty straightforward to us until we started getting into it, because another piece of this that we really evolved over time that the rest of the team's going to take you through is once we do this, what are we going to do with it? Like, how do we share? how do we give this out? And what are the ways that we're going to use it in additional training? So that's all kind of evolved for us. We've given the answers to those. So this was our first brainstorming list of program practices to research. It was a pretty robust list. So I would like for you to take a look at that for just a minute and think about what jumps off the screen at you. What would you be interested, because that's the part we want you to walk away today with, what are you going to do in your state? Do you want to know about some orientation practices? What about all kinds of instructor support? Resources and materials, class scheduling, assessment practices, data practices, partnerships, student supports and services, staff turnover, and we have MSGs on the bottom of this list. Clearly that's a pretty high one, right? But anybody, what do you think, when you look at this list, what do you think would be, okay, I really need to get on top of this in my state? Anything jump out at you? Yeah. Right. Okay, it's Wild West of, so it was GED resources and all that plethora of resources, getting that together. Okay, anybody else something different? Yeah.
I'll say in Mississippi, we're looking at our orientation practices for this next year just because of our retention.
Okay.
Students before those 12 hours.
Right, and I love everything about what you said. The orientation practices in Mississippi, they're taking a look at that because they want to look at retention. And that's one of the things that really is about this list. Nothing lives in isolation, right? Because good GED practices will lead to higher MSGs, which may lead to higher retention, and maybe good orientation, like, you know, so that's kind of what we got into, is like, where do you research to get enough specific information that it's helpful, but also realizing that nothing happens in isolation, that all of these different things are connected. Tara, is there anything that anybody's put in the virtual?
No, they asked to reiterate the question and give the mic, but I let them know you are reiterating the answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so let them know that I don't have shoes to run in, and that's why I'm doing that, so then they'll understand. I'm sure they'll understand at that point. Okay, yes, back here, and I will. Virtual people, we see you, not literally. Don't worry, we're not really in your living room. Well, you know, we live in that world. We got to make that distinction, but we are definitely aware of you, and we will not leave you out. Yes, what else are you thinking? Yes, please. No dumb questions. Oh, thank you very much, because that goes back to the whole, you know, another acronym, a measurable skill gain. So NRS, the National Reporting System, and that's one of the metrics that we are judged by in adult education, a very strong metric. And we are going to allude to in a little bit, like, some of the different ways that you can get MSGs. Because that's the other thing, is there's more than one way to cook that hot dog. Yes?
In Illinois, of these, which one has the greatest rate of return if you decide to focus on it? Or which two have the greatest rate of return? Like, here's where you should, where people are seeing the greatest bang for their buck when they want to improve their program metrics.
And that is a great question, and we are definitely going to get to that. So we're going to talk about what we ultimately chose and how we decided to go forward. And I'm also going to reiterate, I don't know that we're finished. I mean, we got to a point that we feel like, hey, we're onto something, we're seeing some good, and we should share this, but there is in no means saying that this is all we'll ever do with it. Yeah, but that's a great question. All right, so to answer, at least start to answer that question, this is basically where we ended up. Our MSGs are educational functioning level gains. So I alluded to the fact that MSGs, there's more than one way to get an MSG. One is through standardized testing and showing that you have made a level gain on a standardized test. So that's one of those. Also, MSGs are completing IETs, what are integrated education and training programs. So we can get an MSG from that. Credential attainment, in other words, someone has gone through a training program and they've gotten a credential. Workplace literacy, which is evolving in Illinois, which we're really excited about, that we are coming into an employer setting and looking at employer goals for their employees, and then employees as learners as part of our adult education programs. Post-test rate, because again, if you don't test, you're probably not going to have high MSGs. So that sounds really simple and basic, but how do you make sure that you keep them for long enough that you can post-test them? So like all of that, as I said, it doesn't happen in a silo. Yes?
Does Illinois give an MSG for completion of a subtest?
Yes. So the question was, does Illinois give an MSG for a completion of a GED subtest? Yeah, well, yeah. So, yes, we do. Yeah. Okay. Also, high school equivalency completions is another way that you can get an MSG, student persistence, and then lastly, employment. So that tells you kind of the areas that we're taking a look at, which is still a very broad range. And now I'm going to pass it to Amber, who is going to tell us a little bit more about the types of questions that we ask.
Welcome to all those virtual attendees, but also all the people here in the room. My name is Amber Fornaciari. I am part of Sarah's team and a part of this PIP process that we've evolved. PIP process. I always say PIT. It comes out saying like PIT, but PIP process that has evolved in Illinois over the course of the last 2 years, and really it has been a team effort, which is why you're going to hear from all four of us. I got this section because I am the questioner on the team. So when we were talking about what we were going to ask, I was the go-to person, right? I was the person that they were like, what should we ask? How should we word this? And how should we carry this through? So some of the potential questions that we were thinking about are on the screen. For instance, I'll just read a few of them. Please give a summary of your practices for blank metric, right? Please give a summary of your practices for your post-testing. Please give a summary for your practices centered around IETs, okay? Another question, did your program's performance measures change or increase in the last year or two based on your practices? And then if yes, can you identify what those steps taken to make that increase? What are data practices that you live by? These in themselves were reflective questions that some of our participants really had to think about, which is why we gave them ahead of time of the interview. Let me say that was something we thought very clearly about, was we needed to make sure that people had these questions beforehand so that they felt like they could speak to those things and really focus for our 1 hour interview on the things that we thought were going to be replicable or the things they thought other programs would benefit from. These were our standard set of questions. So these were asked by every program that we interviewed. I'd like you to take a minute to look on the screen or on your screen and look at these questions. Nope. There you are. There we go. At least it's better. Okay. So I'd like you to take a minute to look at these questions and tell me what do you notice about these questions? So another word for notice is observe. What are you observing about these questions on the whole? Or go ahead. I'll repeat your answer.
It seems like you're giving space for them to kind of think about their own practices rather than being imposed from above.
Yeah, someone in the crowd said it seems like we're giving them the opportunity to talk about their practices rather than us imposing on them. Yes, sir.
You're interested in metrics guiding the answer?
Yeah, we're interested in metrics guiding the answer. Yes.
Essentially, I think you're looking to see if they are looking at things or self-aware of what's going on.
Yeah, someone said, I think that you are looking to see, are they self-aware? Are they looking at the data metrics, right? And how those are connected to their practices. One more.
Well, since they're so open-ended and they're not on multiple choice or something, I also wonder about, from your perspective, is it hard to then, once you get all that information, kind of organize it and
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think Tara's going to talk a little bit about what we do with the PIP afterwards. And there's an interview, but then there's also a debrief kind of between our group of what did you hear, what did you hear, what did you hear, and what are we going to take from this? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Thank you. So are there any questions you would want to ask that maybe you don't see up here for your state if you were to replicate this practice? Yes, ma'am.
Does funding sources change how you collect data or what you do with it?
So that's the question you would want to ask to the program. So the response in the room was, does the funding source change the way that you collect data? Yes, I see where you're going with that. Does the funding source change how you collect data or how you use it? Right? Yes, ma'am. Oh. Someone in the room said she came in a year and a half ago and her first question, or one of her first questions was, what do you need to be successful? So we were very focused. Sorry, Tara, is there anything in the chat that maybe someone has said? I want to make sure we know.
Not at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for those additions. I think it's important for us to think as we're learning, right, and be able to share what we're hearing and thinking as we're moving through today. When we started with this questioning, we really stuck to just these questions. You saw all of those topics that Sarah put up there earlier. We could have asked 100 questions. We knew that we needed to get to what was the focus, which was data-informed practices that improve performance. So a few things we learned very quickly in this process. Have questions for structure so that people feel comfortable and so that they can prepare. I said earlier, we made sure people had the questions ahead of time. It gave them time to think. It also gave us a way to, if we got a little bit off topic, to come back to the questions we were asking and to gear back, because we knew that they already knew those questions and we wanted to find out more information. We did not gather the answers to those questions ahead of time. We gave them the questions and said, here's what we're going to talk about. This also gave teams of administrators a chance to talk to their individual people, because in some cases, we have programs that have one administrator and they run the whole show. They're the data, they're the teachers sometimes, they're all the hats. And then we have things like City Colleges of Chicago where they have a dozen administrators. And so we were allowing programs to kind of bring things back to their team and say, these are the questions they're asking us, let's talk about this together. And those were actually some of the most interesting interviews as we came back when hearing from the administrative team. And that was something we also learned, was the cohesiveness and the communication happening between team members and how that affected performance, because that was very positive. It was also a good idea. We have ICCB, who is our funder in the state of Illinois for adult education. That's the Illinois Community College Board. It was a good idea for the program support personnel to also attend, listen, and ask follow-up questions, because they have a different perspective. They do more of that TA, and so they might ask the question, what do you need to make this better, right? That's more of their job, the technical assistance as well as the support piece. And so it's really good for them to come and listen to that specific interview about their program that they're kind of in charge of, right? Their program support person. We also needed to listen. All of us are presenters. We all like to talk. But this was an activity in active listening. How were we? We were laser focused on our questioning. Clarifying questions really only. If I am very good at finding another question to ask and another, and we go down a rabbit hole. I needed to rein that in for myself, but also we just needed to stick to those questions and only ask clarifying things, allowing them to tell us their story, allowing their voice to come through, because that's how we got some of the greatest responses. A few early and pretty good ideas here from this process. Words matter. the messaging that came with this to the programs, that this was not a punitive thing. We were looking for replicable practices, like Sarah referenced earlier, that admin group in the room. We were looking for, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing that's making this happen? That was the tone of these interviews and this entire process with our administrators, because ultimately we are meeting with some of the funding personnel, right, from ICCB. We're also the professional development team in the state, so we may have not talked to all of the people that were on this call. So we needed to make sure everyone had very clear messaging and tone about how these meetings and these interviews were going, and then what was going to be done afterwards. Use the data. Someone in the back of the room kind of hinted at this. Use the data, not just what we think we knew about the program. Many of us have kind of little specialty roles, like Tara tends to work with IETs and bridge programs, and so she sometimes knows one person on that staff that might have a lot to say about that, and she might already have an idea about, oh yeah, they're doing really great in this space, and they're doing this, and they're doing this, and they're doing this. We wanted to let the program speak to the replicable practice. We wanted it in their tone, in their voice. So while Tara might know a lot about that program and how they function, we wanted them to give them the chance to say that. Look for replicable practices. When we would meet, more than one of us would be on the interview. Not all of us, because sometimes that was a little too much, but more than one of us would be on the interview. One person was in charge of kind of facilitating the conversation and asking questions, and another person was in charge of those notes. And we were all, if you were in that interview, there was kind of one person that was looking for what are the replicable practices and we were kind of like the sieve, if you will. What are the things that are very specific for that program that could not necessarily be replicated without a lot of work? And then what are the things that could definitely be replicated? I'm writing that down right now so we make sure it gets on the notes. Okay, so having a team to help you with that interview, asking good questions, being very thoughtful about those questions, as you saw on the slide before, trying something and then refining it. We've been doing PIPs for about 2 years now. We have refined it just about after every interview or after every one. We've said we've kind of come back and said, what are we going to do about this next time? Oh, that kind of went different. How do we stick to it? Or even if it wasn't an issue, oh, that one was really good. What do you think made that good? And then having a plan for how to share it and using what you learned, right? And initially our plan was different than what it is now. And so we've refined that throughout the time. In Whova, and those in the room, if you have your device in the app, if you click on this session, there's a link in the chat that is to a folder that is through Canva. We put it together. It has our PIP template on it, okay? So in the app, you don't have to do it right now, but if you want to, you are more than welcome to. I keep moving out of the camera, and I know I do. You don't have to open it right now, but you can if you want to see this and actually read it, because I realize that this is tiny on your screen, and that is there for you as a resource. Not only does it have this template, it has the list of questions we asked, and it also has an example of some of the things we're going to show you in a few minutes. So that link in the Whova app, in the chat, has that. And also we will be putting all of our slides in the app. They will be there later today for you to come back to and check out with clickable links for everything, okay? This is our PIP template. We found this very useful as we were doing kind of our typical duties, and then we were kind of coming into PIP real fast. It was really good to just have this template to get us started and let us see the structure. It also provided programs with a very structured, well-messaged way to do this. One of the things I want to point out is that blurb of text on the left-hand side you see there with that blue arrow. That was our script for every PIP interview. The script was something we said regardless of our relationship with the program. And what I mean by that is some programs we knew really well. And we were like, we just want to have a casual conversation, and we'd get off, oh, your grandkids or blah, blah, blah. We were really trying to be intentional about the purpose of this meeting. And so we made sure that script was read for every single program so that they had a frame for what this meeting was about and what we were going to do with it later. And you can feel free to use that or toss it out. Your opinion. You get to choose if you're going to replicate the PIP process. What did we do with some of these? So we got started about 2 years ago, and what was kind of funny is we were already getting ready for something that we didn't even know we needed to prepare for. So it kind of worked out. Timing sometimes works out like that, right? For instance, we started the PIPs as a kind of pilot. We were working with just a few. And then all of a sudden, we were a part of the Data Institute in our state because we needed to make sure that programs knew how to use their data and their metrics to their advantage. And all of a sudden, we were like, oh, we have something to contribute to this. We've been doing a thing that we need to share with you. And so in the Data Institute, this is a picture from the Data Institute with one of our administrators presenting to others. It was a hybrid Data Institute where there were presenters in person. You could have attended in person. You could have also attended online. And several programs shared what was working for them. What came out of a lot of these PIPs is what you see on the right-hand side. And this is also what's in the link that I mentioned before. There are examples of what we're kind of calling the data sheet or a data summary, the PIP summary from these interviews. You'll see on this one, and I know that you can't read all of it, but there are sections like replicable instructional practices. There they are from this specific program. Then we have replicable intake processes or practices, okay? Then on the right side, we even have their data. They were willing to share their data in relation to these practices and what that looked like. Talk about a level of transparency, right? I am willing, we're all in this together. Our ranking as a state is based on 71 programs. It is not based on one, right? And so we needed to come together to decide how we were going to use this and what replicable practices we were going to take from it. We made these kind of case study handouts to help support the value of the work we were doing. And again, on that link that we shared with you, and that's in the Whova app, you can look at some examples and actually see. In some cases, Tara was awesome. She grabbed some data and put it on graphs, so it was graphically represented. In some cases, it really depended on what we were trying to show, right? Whether it was numbers, we would put that into a graphical representation versus the practices. And I see some people looking at their phones. I'm thinking, you're like, oh, I need to go look at these. Tara's going to get up and talk a little bit more about them and then how we used them.
Okay, so I feel like I get to do the fun part, and I just want to remind you as I start, we are sharing the slides. I feel like the fun part is that I get to share how we shared it, and we hope that that gives you some ideas about how you can share some of the best practices that are going on in your state. But also, I'm going to get to share some of those best practices and awesome data that we got from our programs in the PIP. So some of the text is a little bit small. You can go back and view the slides. We'll put them in the app, I promise. So the whole idea here is, this was a great idea. We enjoyed the conversations. We learned so much. How do we squeeze all the juice from the lime? Not just a little bit. We really want to put our heads together and figure out how can we share this very widely and in the best way possible, and also really keep the roots in data when possible. So on our next slide here, we've got a lot of different images, and I am going to explain. So first, in the upper left-hand corner, it has the Adult Education Administrator Toolkit. The Administrator Toolkit lives on our Professional Development Learning Management System. It's a Moodle site, and this is a course where we have a bunch of little tiles. It's meant for administrators, but it's open to all. It's no secret. We should all be on board on the same team, all hands on deck, so we welcome people to go there. Who do I go to for my questions? ICAPs or IETs, same thing. Bridges, there's a tile about that. There's a tile about workplace literacy there. We have a whole nother presentation we'd love to share with you about the Administrator Toolkit if you'd like to see it. But we want to make clear we put a lot of information from the PIPs into the Administrator Toolkit in the appropriate tiles. The nice thing is people are already in the habit of going to the Administrator Toolkit for information, so it's a great place for us to add some of this wonderful information for our administrators. Next, you'll see our Friday features. We publish Friday features about every 2 weeks. They go to our email listserv, and also they're posted on our LinkedIn and our Facebook social media websites. And what we did is we would put together information from the PIPs that we're doing and share those in our Friday features. So again, this is kind of like a double idea. You know, do you have something like a Friday feature? We also feature best practices, teacher stories, people that are doing great things from around the state, and we publish them to our listserv and to our social media. So I feel like I'm sharing all these great things, and we'll be happy to explain any of it more, and you'll have the slides to look at. LinkedIn. We mentioned LinkedIn as a place that we publish our Friday features. We do this and also other content, you know, like how we were presenting at COABE. So again, people are really starting to go there for information, so we try to share information from our PIPs as well. We also have the Excellence in Adult Education website. So that is for Illinois. You can go there. We have the link. And we have an administrator tab in our Excellence in Adult Education website. So we're able to share recordings, materials, again, in a place that people are familiar with. Our data VLC, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a couple of minutes, but basically we've asked different programs to share information from their PIPs at our virtual learning communities. The two we'll mention are, we have a data virtual learning community that meets once a month. It's focused on data. So again, a lot of the PIPs that were very data driven, some of the ones I'll share that we made, some of those graphical representations that Amber mentioned, we had them come and share at data virtual learning communities. We also will have some programs share very soon at an administrator virtual learning community. And that kind of leads to the next topic I have, really kind of taking individual information and putting it in places where it works best. That kind of transitions into, we use it in individual meetings as well. So our funder, ICCB, when they're having technical assistance meetings or when they're hosting their own meetings, they have this information because we share it. So they're able to use it. Like, hey, did you hear about this other program that added teacher training about WIOA and testing requirements and the data that they were able to, did you hear about that? If not, go see this recording. I kind of suggest that you do that. You see what I mean? So they are able to use it to help other programs. Also in our administrator networking meetings, we also host more casual meetings where administrators are able to talk to each other, get information, ask questions, and we can kind of have this in our back pockets. Hey, don't forget, we posted something about a great PIP. I think this might help you with that. Okay, that kind of thing. Because again, we have 71-ish programs, so sometimes people need to be reminded. They might have missed a meeting, they hadn't seen it yet, so it's just nice to have in our back pockets in that regard. This indicates one of our great PIPs, and we learned some awesome information, and we're able to share it in a Friday feature. We've shared it widely in many places. So this is from Universidad Popular. They gave us some ideas in their PIP, and we shared them at an administrator virtual learning community. One of them was this is all about retention and persistence. So this was about, do you know the times on the school calendar when your student attendance starts to drop off? Thanksgiving break, winter holidays. Use your data to look at this. So again, a lot of these practices are best practices and rooted in data. And they say, identify these points, put them on the calendar, and be intentional about planning a party around that time. They have seen a huge uptick in attendance and persistence after planning and implementing these parties. They have food when they can, they do games, they make sure to take pictures, and they post them so students see themselves there. Another idea that I absolutely love is, again, for those times when we know student attendance drops, have teachers do an informal survey of students. What do you want lessons about? What do you want to learn about? And then plan those lessons for when the students return. And the students have started to notice in their program that teachers are actually responding and planning and implementing those lessons. And they said it's made a real difference. It's a huge uptick in morale as well in their program. So just a couple of great ideas that we heard about in a PIP from those open-ended questions that Amber mentioned. Okay, now we're getting to some of those graphical representations. We continually do our best to bring that full circle. So I know some of this might be hard to see, and I'm going to help you out with that. What we do is we go back to our program support professionals at our funder, and we'll say, we heard about this best practice in our PIP, so we really think that, you know, in their data, this should show an uptick in this area. Can we have their data from the last few years? And then we would look at it and make these graphical representations. So here's just to kind of give you a look, and then we'll look at some specific examples. Here, it says under enrollment, the college added an orientation in order to hopefully capture students that were unable to enroll in the first round who still wanted to attend classes. And so then that should positively reflect on their enrollment. And you'll see in this graph, in the orange and blue, that's exactly what it did. Okay, so the blue is the total with 7.5 hours or more, and the orange is the total NRS reportable with 12 hours or more. So it was just great to go back and also be able to share them with colleges before we publish any of these. We always share them back to the program, make sure everything's okay, and it's been great for them to use in their materials also. Again, the fun part, some of the other great practices that we uncovered. One of our community colleges that I also have the pleasure of teaching at here and there, they use a spreadsheet that tracks attendance, and the admin there put in conditional formatting that has features. If a student falls below 10 hours, for example, an area turns yellow. If below 5, it turns red. So she really kind of looked at her data and found ways to help them see quickly, you know, what they needed to act on. Also, in terms of retention, Danville Community College, they really emphasize recognizing students, so displaying posters for Student of the Month and GED graduates, sending personal texts from the staff when a student passes a GED subject test. They send postcards. They also have tuition waivers that they were able to work out with their foundation. This is something that is coming up. Full disclosure, we have a lot going on in our state. So do you. We have some extra large scale changes happening that need our attention, but we are going to have a virtual learning community this summer because we want to be able to share the great information from our PIPs. So at a spring or early summer administrator VLC, 4 of our adult ed programs are going to share some of the great outcomes from their data that we talked about in our PIPs. It's already organized for them because we have those templates that we shared with you, and so we're helping them to also make this sharing as light of a lift as possible. This is an example of, and again, we shared the slides with you, or we're going to put the slides in the app. Another great practice that we uncovered in our PIPs, this is a weekly wrap that one of the administrators sends to the entire staff. We're implementing some exciting new retention efforts into the orientation process. So this is just an example of something we uncovered. We were able to share with other administrators who have now started to do weekly or monthly wraps that they send out via email to their staff. They do not wrap to their staff, Amber's saying. Okay, again, we shared this, but data-driven decision-making, and this was shared at one of our data VLCs. This is all about looking through the information via Excel sheets to look at common exit points, to identify those, and also, why do we have some more of the generic exit codes? So he was really digging into the why of when students were exiting and trying to pay attention to that and see what they could do to reduce barriers through their orientation and wraparound services. This is a great practice from St. Augustine College. What they do is before students enroll in an online hybrid or high flex class, they have them take a digital skills inventory test. they have a course ready to deliver if students score in a certain level. And so they're ready for the class. So that has really helped them. This is some of the intake questions that we uncovered that have helped our programs improve that process. A couple others, you heard about Universidad Popular when I talked about the parties and the lesson planning. They also use WhatsApp widely. Our students all use WhatsApp, so they've done that program-wide, and it's really helped. And they use some of the questions that I talked about, asking about lessons. They'll text the students and ask, in case you couldn't think of something in class, what's something that you want to study when we come back from break? They use it for feedback. They also follow up on barriers and other data points that might be missing, like, hey, can you come in and talk to us about this? We need to get a few pieces of information from you. At Mundelein High School, we really dug into, in their PIP interview, their collaborative practices as a staff. They're dedicated to their IT and technology support, and so all staff is trained, and then they have support people at all their locations. They also share things like know your rights information, making sure all the staff has the same information to share with students. They're really trying to push that safe and supportive learning environment that reduces disruptions for instructors and students. So I'm going to pass it off. We just wanted to give you an idea of some of the information that we get and how we share it.
Hi, I'm Anita Kerr. Glad to finish up with you. So because PIP is such a data-driven process, we thought we would show you a little bit of data. So recognizing that the PIP and the data metrics we looked at from the particular programs we were interviewing doesn't drive the data for the whole state, right? It's not the thing, it's one thing. But here you can see that from our FY24 data to our FY25, where PIP was happening here and we were sharing out a lot of best practices, all the metrics did go up. So we claim a little tiny piece of that success and attributing that to the fact that we were sharing out from program to program what is working and they were adopting each other's practices. So we're using that metric right there to encourage us as we move forward with our PIP. So as we look ahead, I think Sarah mentioned, this is a process that we're still working on. We are not done with PIP. We're thinking about how it's going to evolve for the future. So here are just a couple of our ideas, and I would be curious as you're kind of processing these, maybe you're also thinking, oh, if I did something like that, I would also do blank. So that's where I want your brain to be. So here what we have, as we stated earlier, we began kind of our second year of PIP this year with our plan in mind, and we asked our funding agency for specific programs that had top performance metrics for us to interview. So instead of us going looking, we just asked our funding agency to give them to us. So that happened, and we plan to continue that data-driven approach. We've also started emphasizing kind of the celebratory aspect of PIP when we reach out to programs, making sure they know that the state is seeing their good outcomes, and that is what is causing this interview. Again, not punitive in any way, but it's not only is it not punitive, it's celebratory. We want them to say, we're doing good work and we're being recognized for it. That matters to everyone. It's the pat on the back, it's the gold star, and everybody deserves that. So that's part of what's coming out of this, making sure that they know the state sees their outcomes, and then praising their whole team, not just during the meeting, but even in the invitation email, letting them know that we're recognizing their work. We've also made a concerted effort to refine our asks. We're thinking deeply about, are we highlighting those programs from across the state, right? And I should say across, we should go like this, up and down the state, right? Different types of programs, rural and urban, in person, at a distance. And that helps make the information that we collect and share out to the field even more valuable because people can see themselves represented in the programs that are included. If we only ever highlighted urban Chicago CBOs and that's it, then maybe a downstate community college might say, I don't really see myself in that data or in that practice. So we want to be representative of everyone. So we're trying to be very intentional about that. And then we've also had PIP meetings where a topic was mentioned that kind of uncovered either a need for technical assistance, and I think somebody mentioned our ICCB technical assistance person is usually in the call with us, so that automatically there's a connection for help. But sometimes also there's like PD support needs that come up, and we're right there, and we can say, oh, I hear that need being expressed. Let's follow up on that later. So some of those kind of just benefits are happening without really going looking for them. They happened as a side. So here's another unplanned benefit. We just wanted to share, we mentioned Universidad Popular a couple of times. Abraham is their primary administrator, and this was the email he sent to Sarah when she sent the invite. Our team was excited when I shared this email with them. Your congratulations were received with gratitude. As we know, our frontline educators work hard day and night to work with the community to improve English language acquisition while incorporating life skills. That's a pretty beautiful message, and what we wanted to highlight there was that was from the invitation email. Hey, we'd like to have this interview with you. Notice the thing he took away from our email was congratulations. That's how it was received and viewed as celebratory. And so we would strongly recommend that if on whatever level, whether it's statewide or program-wide, or you're just talking about reaching out to teachers because you want to talk about their practices. And you know how in English writing we always talk about a hamburger, like start with this, end with this, and you put the hard stuff in the middle. There's really no hard stuff here, but definitely start with the good stuff. Tell them why they're being asked to speak and share. And people like hearing that, as we all do. So we're going to have a chance to let you process a little bit, think. For those of you who are solo processors, that's fine. We envisioned this kind of as a turn and talk, so just use your neighbor next to you. And online participants, the chat is there and you can chat with each other. And what we'd like you to do is kind of think about incorporating the PIP concept into either your state, your local program, whatever role you're serving in, how might you incorporate it? So we're going to just give a few minutes for some neighbor talk, and then we'll do a quick share out. So here are the two questions, and you can choose. What data metrics or information would be most useful to collect and share as those replicable practices to a wider audience? So whatever, if you're at a local program, you're at a state, wherever you're collecting the data, what would be most useful to collect in terms of metrics or information? Or if you'd like to think about what could be the value of amplifying excellent performance and letting other people hear how it's going for someone else. What's the value at your level for that? So just pick one of those questions, reflect on it, and we would love just for you to turn and talk, and then we'll just do a quick check-in in a few minutes. So thank you.
So what level do you work at? Let's start there.
Sure.
You said state level or youth level?
Program level.
Okay. So it'd be different answers for you and I. I'm at the state level.
Okay.
I do things like this, but not anything formalized, like documentation or anything necessarily. We'll hear somebody's doing something cool, we usually just call them up and say, fuck this company. But, I mean, I think it's, for us, I think the value is not only learning so we can, best practices, share it out, but it's really this acknowledgement from us as the state office, the scary compliance piece, like, hey, this is really cool what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think is, what feels most valuable.
Well, we had a really kind of strong leader in our state office. Unfortunately, she just left, but she was really strong on the data side of things. And so the last time I had a conversation with her, it was really good because she was super knowledgeable, and I could ask her what are the other programs around the state doing that are succeeding at a high level. And she could, they're doing X, Y, Z, and we can see that you're not doing that. But if you want to start doing that, you probably see a program. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's to have something so crystal clear and available is helpful to me. I wonder sometimes if folks don't want to share things because they don't want to be intrusive or they don't want to feel like they're stepping on toes. And of course, we always have to think about how we present ourselves and how we're saying what we're saying. But we shouldn't be so worried about that we're not willing to say it. So it was, and since you said you were at the state, from the program perspective, I could say I enjoyed hearing those things. So I could get some perspective too. And I'm glad that this other person was willing to share. So.
I think that's important. We're working on that in Kentucky because for many, many years, I mean, obviously, the nature of movies is that it's a competition and that so you have to apply for it,
Sure,
right?
yeah, right.
But the way that we do our funding now, there's no real competition between that. Like you apply, like you have these counties, CSA databases, like you have, no performance measures with it or anything like that. There has been in the past. Because there was in the past, there is, and there's also regular, we put out regular monthly data to show how you're doing in items. And there was a ranking associated with it. So for many years, our local had a feeling that we're constantly competing against each other. But in reality, all the state numbers are the state numbers. We put them in NRS and it goes to the federal government and they say, hey, manage. So we've been slowly but surely in the last few years like moving away from that. But it's difficult because when you talk to local people and you say it's really cool what you're doing, there's a brand new IET program that you've created or whatever. Talk to me about that. What do you want to share with your colleagues in other counties or the other part of the state or whatever? And it's almost just like depending on the person. It's like, what do you want to see? And you're like, and they're like, oh no, this is not like I did it. This is ours. And then, like, so even if you weren't really around, it's kind of part of the drama. Or like, oh yeah, so there's the other one. Like, we're like kind of our own thing. Not only can we be how to share that also it's a good I'm not pinpointing you because bit of a, app on the shoulder, okay, let's figure out what's going on here, how to help the situation. So I'm like, oh, this is, like, let me get some context because I'm going the wrong direction with this. But this is cool. I'd like to make kind of a, I find anyway, like, you know, especially even just like on performance improvement stuff, like having documentation, like, that,
Okay, in about 30 seconds, we're going to do a check-in. 30 seconds. Okay, we want to make sure we have time to do a little bit of a report out. So thank you all for your extremely engaged conversations, can I just say? I don't know about you guys, but sometimes in the afternoon, after conference, after lunch, it's nice to just have a little minute to chat and connect. So thank you for being willing to do that. So anybody want to share a takeaway that came from their partner conversation that you think maybe was something that was kind of eye-opening or that you think would be helpful to the room? We'd love to hear. Great. I'm going to bring the mic so people can share.
She doesn't know I'm going to share it. Okay, yeah. So, what's your name again? Melinda helped set up a PD, an internal PD that invited high-performing teachers to share kind of how they approach getting their metrics, and apparently those teachers were extremely excited about it, and if anything, they didn't budget enough time for them to share. So,
thank you. That's great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else with a takeaway they'd like to share from their partner chat? Yes.
One thing we talked about was that in both of our states that there's opportunities like this for programs to share about what's working, but it's more informal. And so thinking about trying to make a more formal process like what you have. And I also have a question, if that's all right. You know, when you were talking at the beginning about how Illinois is very diverse and, you know, from massive city to very rural areas, and, you know, like I'm in Pennsylvania, it's very similar. When you're sharing out, you know, when you're having these, you know, sharing out about these promising practices, do you kind of differentiate based on like this is really working in rural programs versus in the urban areas, or how do you do that?
What a good question. So generally speaking, we let the programs decide what information is valuable to them. So we would never probably say, this is for urban programs and then share it. But we do try to be intentional about offering some from a range, as I mentioned, so that everyone is hearing something that can be applicable to them. But we usually leave it open and let them decide if that practice is replicable in their program or if it is not. So leaving them a lot of choice is very wise. Yeah.
Also, in the different ways that we share the information, there's generally a prompt for people to be thinking about how they could use it in their setting. And I think even the way we word the replicable practices or the nuggets that we're looking for are applicable to 70% of our programs. They could do that in some way, right? It might look a little bit different, but the ideas could be replicated easily. But that's what we're looking for, is things that a lot of programs could use. Sarah was just talking here to a group about initially our first top 5 programs when it came out to metrics, many of them were our high school districts. And why? And we use this term, but like butts in seats, right? You have those students in those seats for a long amount of time. Generally, those metrics are higher. So we had to start looking outside of the top 5 ranking programs in the state to start looking for programs that still had high metrics. So we might look in the top 12% instead of the top 10, right? To look for maybe not the top 1, because that one, or we did contact the top couple, but looking outside of, not being so hard about your metrics and where they are in that, you know, is it top 10% or top 12%? Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share a takeout? Yes.
Started with a question. Thank you, Astrid. How many programs or practices do you highlight each year in Illinois? So last year we did 2 a quarter. So that's what we do in Illinois. Sarah's really good with numbers and remembering all the specifics. So we typically do 2 a quarter, and then we try to do as many of the sharing points, that we talked about in that section as we can. Absolutely. Where can we use it? What virtual learning community can we share in? Can we put all these together in a Friday feature based on topic or based on timing? It just kind of depends, but we try to share as much as we can. Other things that people would like to know, thank you, Bridget. As illustrated by the slide, amplifying excellent performance makes frontline staff feel seen and valued. I think it'd be rejuvenating to be praised for the successes when there are so many struggles from day to day. It helps focus on the positives. Then sharing that with others can also provide hope, encouragement, and ideas to implement locally. Thank you so much. Robin would like to track attendance to determine if there's a pattern to when students' attendance decreases and increases to better meet their needs. And maybe you could plan a party or the lessons, or they have some challenges with their current young cohort, Bridget was saying. Okay, yes. Programs appreciate hearing real life examples of what's working from their peers. People would like to see how attendance hours affect EFL gains. A couple programs talked about students leaving too early and not post-testing, wanting to look at waitlist numbers and strategies for triaging learners on a wait list. So they talked to some administrators and leadership, so they want to kind of share that out. I did share in the chat a wonderful messaging for assessment that my colleagues put together. So this helps administrators, teachers, orientation specialists to talk to students about testing and what it means and what's their role in it and how does it all work. I shared that in the chat, so you can go back to Whova. Please use it. My wonderful colleagues put that together, and that's something we want to share. So that can be a really important resource. Unfortunately, there's a huge misconception that GED AHSE is easy. Yeah, all data is helpful, but the data points around conversion, post-secondary enrollment, or dual enrollment would help us better understand information such as the average length of a program commitment for students who are successful in dual enrollment or post-secondary enrollment, academic readiness, defined by NRS levels, and more. So, thank you.
I know we're almost at time, but I just want to build on because somebody was calling out Abraham's fantastic response when he immediately took it and sent it to his people and said, look at this, folks. You did a great job. I want you to know that we changed our practices after that. We include that now. We suggest hear that intro email saying congratulations, all these things. We said, we suggest that you share this with all of your people so that you know. And we're like, duh, why didn't we think of that? But Abraham did, and we're like, we're going to use it.
Well, thank you all for not only being willing to listen to our PIP plan, but thinking about how that might look in your own roles. We appreciate you being reflective and thinking. There's that link again, just a reminder, it's in the Whova app to that Canva link that Amber put all the docs together in one place. And if you have questions that you want specifically answered, Sarah, our director there's her email address. So if you'd like to reach out and ask some more specific questions that maybe you didn't want to ask in front of the room, there you go. And we're really grateful that you gave us your time to be at our session for Promising Practices. So thanks a lot, you guys.